I decided to talk a bit about a very simple topic, which is how will the next 100 years look like? So I said, yeah, I'm going to do this speech. So I started writing, and I realized, how in God's name am I going to comprise 100 years in 14 minutes and 2 seconds already? But in the same time, I realized it's not about how much information you give, but whether or not you can instill in people the need to find out more. So I hope this comes along as well. This is a funny year. It's funny because when you say it in English, it sounds really long. 2118. So, as some of you might have seen the 2020 metaphor, I'll say 2118 because it sounds easier. Now, this is a time when, for many of us, our children will be great parents. I was born in 1984. This was the year when the first Mac appeared. This was the year when the super cool Nike Air Jordans appeared. And this is when Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, also appeared. Neither of this was in Romania, naturally. But this was the hype of 1984. Now, the question is whether, not what happened in 1984, but what will happen in the next 100 years. Do you see yourself at the 200th celebration of Romania? Okay, who thinks they will catch in Piazza Victoriei the 200 years anniversary? Okay, I see some very young people there. You're minus 18 or something. Now, a lot of people, when they look in the future, they look at a very limited future. So, I recently did a social experiment. Last year, I made a Facebook event about the solar eclipse in 2081. Have you ever heard of it, this event? Oh. So it went viral, I'll tell you that. It started very funny. Why, let's thank you, Iris. Let's make people think about the future. Now, you would be surprised how many people, and we're talking about 80,000 people going and about 90,000 people interested, that said, I'm not going to live that long. That and the incredible amount of references to how Ion Iliescu will catch it. Now, this very small Facebook event, some of the futurism classes I teach, but also some of the conferences we do with Innovations for Tomorrow showed me something really interesting. People, when they talk about what will happen in 2030, 2050, 2081, are like, this is unreal. But at the same time, they talk about what happened 10 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, very easily. Futurism, foresight, futurology, it goes by many names. It is a social science that creates scenarios about the future. Yes, it is a science, no, it cannot be exact. The purpose of this, actually, is to help businesses, governments, organizations to get ready. Now, this is not very common in the world, but in particular, it's not very common in Eastern Europe. But before going into the future, let's go back into the past. So, what did people think 100 years ago that today will look like? Well, the dresses are funny, but as you can see, it's very clear. You have, let's call it augmented reality. You have text-to-speech, and you have agriculture that is sort of automated. But our reality exceeds their imagination. You might have seen them at the previous speaker. And you might have heard Iris as well. The next minutes are also about them, because they are very important for us. How will their life look like in 100 years from now? Mara is 2 years and a half. Iris is 11 months. You can sort of hear her on my left now. But we're very curious how their life will look like. And who are we in the end? In the next years, roughly, let's say, when they start high school around 2030, when I'll be very young still, world population reaches about 8.6 billion. So that's 1 billion extra than we have today. When you look at 2100, or even more, it goes to around 11 billion. Now, need not to worry, this will not go like this, but it reaches a plateau and it calms down. Sorry. Unfortunately, this is not really valid for Romania. As you can see, we are having the speech now, and we're about 19 million. But when I retire, if I retire at 65 or not, we might be about 16 million. And it goes on, and it's not really good. When you look at ages of Romania in the future, and who comprises the ages, the people that are what some would call productive are shrinking, those between 35 and 64. But there's also good news, we live longer. It's absolutely astonishing how our species has been able to grow in life expectancy. Romania, in roughly 1910, had a life expectancy of 36 years old. 36. Now we go to almost 75, and 100 years from now, we go to 87, which is absolutely amazing. Now, when you talk about 2030, you live in a world where there's a huge global middle class asking more and having more resources. It's a world where super artificial intelligence rules. It's a world where 3D printing and 4D printing is pretty much common. In the same time, it is a world in which climate change affects billions of people. Sorry. For example, roughly between 40 and 42% is the increase in water needs. That leads to about 30% loss of cereals as well every year at global level. In the same time, between 1.8 and 2.6 billion people will have water challenges. And you can imagine the crisis that this leads to. Now, what do we eat in the future? About 2030 says an increase in, well, 63.5, what I said to put just 63. 63% increase in poultry, so chicken, ducks, etc. But also about 55% increase in demand of milk, and about 45% in demand of meat. More demand that pushes on agriculture. Now, some will try lab-grown meat, but we as a family might give it a shot with insects. 15 years from now. Roughly, as we speak, there are more than 2,000 edible insect species in the world. There's about 2 billion people now that regularly consume insects. Low-fat, protein, vitamins, whatever you need, it's in there. In the future, unfortunately, sustainable consumption might not be the case. People will continue to eat what we usually eat now through hardcore agriculture. But in the same time, they might try new types of technology in agriculture. We already have companies like Beyond Meat that makes sausages, burgers from plants, or Perfect Milk and Beyond Eggs that do eggs and milk without animals. And my favorite, seafood from sea plants, from new food. This is actually a shrimp that is made from plants, in particular sea plants or algae. Now, we also die, pretty much, in the future. Roughly 2030 sees the same level of causes of death related to heart disease. And heart disease is usually connected to nutrition and stress. I remember the times a couple of years ago when I sent what's called in Romanian a bip, but also text messages, very short, of course. Then we had Facebook, then we had WhatsApp, then, all the other text-based messaging. But when you go into the future a bit, you actually talk about this. It sounds super science fiction. But virtual telepathy, between 2035 and 2040, will be the mass communication tool with ear plugs and sensors that are miniaturized and some even implantable. This is the way people communicate through business or poetry, for that matter. After 2040, when I reach a certain age, let's call it 65, my wife, which you actually saw earlier, might actually give me a little box and say, you should go somewhere alone and open the box. And I do that because I will still listen to her 40 years from now or 30 years from now. And I will open the box and start crying. Resurrection of dead people is something that supercomputing and super AI will be able to do in 2040 and 2050. I will be able to talk with people that I love that either died or will die in the future, like my mother, or friends, or celebrities. I always wanted to have a chat with Einstein, and I will be able to do that. But how is everything possible? How is this possible as well? Quantum computing, which is trillion times faster than normal computing, let's say, will appear between 20 and 25 years from now. It will also support us in the next dream of humanity, which is going to other planets. My daughters will catch either with Elon Musk's overambitious plan to land people on Mars 6 years from now, by the way, 6 years from now, or NASA's most realistic plan of getting people on Mars 15 years from now. Towards 2070, 2080, as French Riviera was a blast in the 60s, going on Mars might actually become the next touristical place. To go to see Mariner Valley, which is the largest canyon in the solar system, might be a great gift. At the same time, my father lived through humanity going to the moon. We will live through humanity going on Mars. And maybe us, but definitely my daughters and their children maybe, will actually witness humanity going on Europa, Io, and all the other Jupiter satellites. What does this mean in terms of the Earth, relations to other spaces? What it means, actually, is that we are at the end of the Homo sapiens. And this happens because some of us are able now to completely change their appearance, to completely change their feelings, to completely change the way they look or the level of life that they have, if they can afford it. Of course, neither of this is possible without money. So ask yourself, what would money look like in 2060? We also live towards 2050 in a world of nanorobotics and bioelectronics. What this means actually is, if you're sick now, thank you, but still, I'm not finished. Towards 2060, 2050, you will be able to have inside of you miniaturized little robots, nanorobots, and bioelectronics that will cure diseases before they appear. At the same time, you can play with your emotions, because cognitive psychology and brain science will have reached such levels where you can control your emotions, and you can see other people's emotions as well. My daughters, in their 30s and 40s, will live in a world of honesty, and not because of some noble desire, but because you never know in the future who has some form of retinal device that can actually detect lies and feel emotions. This is a world of the future which I think I will not be ready for. Imagine you click a button and you are on this beach. You feel the wind, you feel the water, you feel the margaritas. You feel everything, you hear everything, you are everything. This is what 2050, at least, looks like. The ability to immerse yourself in virtual reality and feel no difference from reality. And what this leads us is a world in which you have three types of reality. You have the primary reality, where we all are now, the secondary reality, which is augmented reality, and the third one, the virtual reality, where some people might decide to live forever. Because this is a place where they can fulfill their dreams and be happy. This is a place where nobody blames them. This is a place where everybody loves them, or not. It's their decision. Obviously, this will be very expensive. So it's very interesting to see how they will pay, especially when they might not have enough revenue for that. So some people say that they will pay with their bodies. Early 22nd century shows us, for the first time in 4 billion years, natural selection, evolution, being slowly replaced by intelligent design. Organic, slow evolution, slowly replaced by inorganic, fast revolution. Because the pace of change is so fast, you need to adapt and be adaptable. In the same time, you need to ask yourselves the right questions. Some of my colleagues at Future Makers, which you can see tomorrow at TEDx Adventures, have traveled around Romania talking about 2,000 young people and asking questions like this. What do you need to do and know now to be relevant tomorrow? What do you need to do as a business, as an organization, as a government? You need to know now to be relevant tomorrow. I wish you an amazing 100 years ahead. At the same time, don't be foolish. Be curious. Thank you.